Welcome to the Not for Clicks podcast.
Even if you weren't gonna dance, I don't think you could do the maths to check out 99% of the time.
You got like Onana was playing yesterday for United, wasn't he? And like the tournament starts in a few days. Like England would nenever have that.
They'll finish with 10, 15 league goals.
10-15 league goals.
Wow.
This is the Not for Clicks podcast. I'm Jordan. I'm joined by Ollie, Marvin, and G. This is the podcast where we talk football, sports, and all in between. We don't hold back. We give our honest views on what's happening within the world of sports. Marvin, Gabriel, Ollie, how are we doing, gentlemen? We well?
All good. Just watching the mighty Chelsea in the massive semi-final in the background as well. So if I'm a little distracted, you know why. Big game.
How the mighty have fallen. How the mighty have fallen.
I'm not going to lie, guys. If we win this, I'm going to be shameless. I'm going to act like it's the biggest tournament.
If you win this, you're always shameless, G.
I mean, I just wanted to start with such gusto, and G's just ruined it. He's ruined it, hasn't he?
I think there's some jealousy in there, Marv.
Yeah,
so by the time this podcast comes out.
A cup that we won last season.
Yeah, last season, but you know, what are you going to win
You notice, I didn't boast and I wasn't shameless. I put it down where it is, the lowest ranking cup out there.
I mean, a cup's a cup at the end of the day.
Gee, when you have kind of cup semi-finals, yeah, and they're games that kind of interest the neutral, yeah, not just the fans of the clubs that are playing in it. How many fans do you think, how many neutrals do you think around the country give a rat's ass about this game tonight? Honestly,
I think everyone's watching it apart from us, and I'm sure Marv's got it in the background as well. I know you want to switch on as well, Lily.
There must be a fair few Chelsea fans who are kind of sitting at home thinking, "Can I really be asked to watch this game tonight?" Honestly,
it's weird. It's wrong. It's wrong on multiple levels. But the key thing, to George's point, I'm going to be shameless. Like, gee, newsflash, you're shameless. Win or not, you've shown not 1 ounce of shame when we've had these conversations. Giving us a precursor is totally unnecessary.
All right. So let me change it then. I'm going to take the shamelessness to another level.
Okay. Lucky us. Lucky us.
Does that extend to saying I always rated Poch? Please don't.
No, it doesn't go down.
Please don't say that you're gonna start telling me you rate Poch all of a sudden if he beats Middlesbrough. Yeah, right, okay. It's not that shameless then. Even you can't stoop. Even you can't stoop that low.
You can't even get through the intros.
Let's chat about something more interesting, or even interesting. At the point of recording, the AFCON begins this weekend, a couple of days on Friday night. Let's not pretend like we're experts, guys, in African football. So we're not those guys. Is anybody going to be watching it this week? Sky belatedly got the rights to show it. I think it's not the first time that AFCON has struggled to get a British broadcaster lapping it up. And I mean, we were saying before we went live, Marv, you didn't think it was a major tournament to be kind of grabbed by the broadcasters like that. I think it is. I actually think it is. I am kind of surprised that.
I mean, like, let me clarify my comment, because I don't want any of our African brethren sending for me on pod number one.
They're coming already. They're coming already.
Let me be clear. Personally, at an international level, I think the only major tournament is the World Cup. And then after that, because I live in Europe, I see the Euros as like the next one down.
You can't include. Can I just say, you can't include the World Cup. You can't include that. We're talking about continental.
The major tournament.
We're talking about continental tournaments. As a continental tournament.
You just made the rules of how we're going to adjudicate major international tournaments.
Because the World Cup is the World Cup. Of course, the World
Cup
is
major.
It's the top of the
major.
pile.
Yeah, but it's major by default.
Marv, the clue is in the name. It's called the World Cup. What we're talking about are continental tournaments, yeah? So we're talking. So when we're talking about it, we're talking about the Euros, we're talking about the African nations, and we're talking about the Asia Cup. and then whatever
America.
and the Copa America and all the rest of those. You can't include the World Cup.
Rest of those. So
Okay,
weird.
so what
What about the Olympics?
it's hard. It's hard. All right.
The Nations League.
Okay. Let me put it like this: if since I was become the adjudicator of the fact the World Cup can't be included, I would put, in terms of hierarchy, I'd put the Euros number one, and I would put like the Copa and the AFCON and all the rest number two, right? Like I will be watching it. Will I be going out of my way like I'll be going for the World Cup? No. Am I really interested? Yes. But to put it on the same level as the Euros, and I think it's purely based on where I live and the sort of quality I think I'll see in the tournament, I wouldn't put it above the Euros. I'd put it below. And to be honest with you, the only reason why I put it on the same level as Copa is just time difference. I don't get to watch the Copa that much because of the times it's usually shown. But I would say that I would anticipate the quality to be higher there than at the AFCON. Now, that's not taking anything away from the AFCON. It's getting better. We've just, there's a number of Premier League teams that are going to be short-handed. And I'm glad Sky picked it up.
So before we get to the teams we think are going to be affected the most, Ollie G, were you surprised that it took literally days before the tournament starting for a broadcast to pick it up? And is that a disrespect in of itself?
I'm not surprised. Do I see it as a disrespect? I could see it look at it that way. But overall, I want us to do better, right? Like I think we could host a better tournament. I think we could ensure that less of our players go to, end up playing for European teams. And therefore, I think it's great to see kind of like Salah or Mane, but you could take the whole French team out and put them into different parts of AFCON as well. So I don't look at it from the perspective of, oh, poor us, these people disrespecting us. I look at it from, let's make the tournament better ourselves, and I think that over time that can be achieved.
Gee, I was thinking when you turned around and said, I think we could do better. I thought, what have we got to do with it? What did we do wrong? I thought you were talking about this pod.
Let me tell you,
we've only just started, G.
What G just said there is wild. Like, where you put the French team, G, are you saying do better to a level where, like, African French players don't want to play for France anymore? Like, the tournament's going to be so good, they're going to want to go, hold on. No. I don't want to play there. I want to play here. This is where it's at. This is on the level of the World Cup of major tournaments.
I'm not just saying that. I think when it comes to outside of the tournament, when it comes to African players choosing who they choose to play for, a lot of it does kind of come down to politics, conditions, whether people are going to get paid. And I think if we can make African football more professional in general, there'll be a better tournament to sell. And therefore, you won't have to have these scenarios where people are like, oh, well, pick it up the last minute, or it's on Eurosport or something. AFCON on Eurosport. I never really understood that.
I'm not sure I go along with that. Like, Ollie, do you agree? I mean, if every African player was given the option of playing for their heritage nation or France, where they might have grown up, I think 9 out of 10 are going to France. I don't think it's just a case of there's politics that make it difficult for them to pick their country of origin. I think that the riches and the profile that comes with playing for someone like France, unfortunately, mean that I reckon 9 out of 10, they're picking, if they have the chance to play for France, they're going to play for France.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not really sure where G's coming from with this one. I don't see that, there's a long way to go before that could ever happen. I just don't see that players are going to make that choice at this moment in time.
I think where you did see some disrespect was the whole thing about AFCON. The main thing that people have always said is it's because it's when it's played that's such a big issue. We don't want to send our players off, etc., etc. But then you saw what happened with the World Cup last year, and you did not get the same conjecture at all. People just did it, maybe because they were getting money in their pocket for where it was hosted, but that's another thing. But overall, there is this feeling that it is kind of like a B Tech tournament, like a tournament that people. I mean, you got like Onana was playing yesterday for United, wasn't he? And like the tournament starts in a few days. Like England would never have that.
But that was his choice, though. Apparently,
Yeah, it was. And that's why I say about us, and when I say us, I mean Africans taking responsibility for our own tournament. Onana made that choice and decided. I decided not to do it. I don't know when that's funny.
Why are you laughing, Marv?
Like when you like the pod's called Not for Clicks, and G comes on here. Right? G comes on here and goes, "We need to do better as people." You know, he's like, if G isn't trying to get whoever he sends this to, whoever watches this, if G is not trying to get a little bit of favour with this, right? It's come out of nowhere. At no point have I ever heard G go, "I really hope they do this tournament well because we need to retain our French Africans," right? Like it is wild to me, but I do agree with the point he's making.
Just briefly, guys, who do we think was going to be most affected in the Premier League because of AFCON? I'm just going for the list here. Villa have got a couple of key players. Bournemouth got a couple. Brentford got 3. Chelsea, you're going to lose Nicholas Jackson, but that could be a blessing.
Geez.
No?
Well, it might be.
Has he already gone, G?
Yeah, he's off. I haven't noticed any difference.
Is he a starter in Senegal's team? Is he a starter?
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, he must be.
I mean,
I can't believe that he's a starter. I mean, you know, they must have something better than him.
I think.
Wow.
he got a hat trick at the Lane, so I mean.
Oh, you're going there. You're going there.
Touche.
Oh, wow.
He did the Sui as well.
I was so angry when he did that. You know?
He couldn't. He spent ages trying to work out how to break down a 9-man team.
The thing is, so Jordan, ask your question. I think it's got to be Forest. They've got like a shed load of players.
Yeah, they've got 3.
No, they've got 6.
They've got 6. Yeah.
1, 2. Oh, it's got 4 here.
Nah,
They've got more.
7.
They've got the most.
But 6.
But then Forest have got like 100 players as well. Like I always feel like
you're right. I think it's out of I think Forest will be affected on a sort of personal Man United note. I'm devastated about Ahmad Diallo because he has just come back from injury, and I really don't want to see Anthony near the starting 11. But he'll be going off to the Ivory Coast, so we won't see him for a bit. And knowing him, he'll probably get injured. I think West Ham will struggle as well because I think Kudus has been like, is it Kudus? How do I say the name? He's been a revelation of like he tortured United.
Big problem.
So I think he'll be a miss. And then other than that, like I'm looking at the people. I'm just calling out the teams that haven't got anyone affected, like City. Just they're probably racist, aren't they? I'm joking. No.
Let's move on.
Allegedly.
Episode 1, though, G. Episode 1. We're gonna get sued.
Get the lawyers out.
Oh, jeez. Let's move on. Ivan Toney. His ban comes to an end. He's likely to play this weekend against Nottingham Forest. He's been seen training, scoring hat tricks in behind closed doors matches. So he did an interview. He's done some presses. We did an interview with Sky, quite a big interview. This follows an interview he did a couple of months ago with Stephen Bartlett. And he was on a podcast, I think, as well. I forgot what it's called, a bit before that. Anyway, who saw the interview and what have we learned from the interview? You saw it, Marvin, didn't you?
When I look at the interview, he was really respectful of Brentford. And he was really thankful for the support, really thankful for the fans. He's here to help them stay up. And for me, it was like, I want to see this out. But he's out of contract in the summer.
No, I think
right?
it's
so, summer, left summer.
But this is the best. Like for me, it's like Brentford are either going to sell him now or they're going to sell him in the summer. It sounds like he was saying, I'm going to keep you up. A, I don't think they're in trouble. But B, part of me just felt, is this guy just trying to go on a free at the end of the contract, right? Like, it's one of those things where if he goes into the summer, yeah, they can make a bit of cheese from him, but it was a bit, I love Brentford, and I think realistically, he's already made up his mind that once the contract's done, he's going to go to a bigger club.
Does anybody think that Ivan Toney is in a good headspace to come back and bang goals again? Or do you think that because he seemed a little bit, he was quite calm in how he was talking to Darren in the interview, but I guess since there's a little bit of bitterness I still think that he is carrying feelings about the length of the ban. I think that he thinks he was slightly done dirty. I don't, but I think that he does feel that way.
I don't even think it was slight, Jordan. I think he does feel like he was done dirty. I think he was done dirty. And I think, like, you know, a sort of wounded animal or someone with a chip on the shoulder. Like, I've got no doubt he'll finish with 10, 15 league goals this season. I honestly feel like
15 league goals.
Yeah,
wow.
I think he'll get 15 strong. I think he'll finish at least double digits.
Between
Yeah,
10 and 15. Okay. G, how highly do you rate him? What kind of level are we talking about when we talk about Ivan Toney? Because we were saying earlier on about the lack of real finishers. Marvin mentioned number 9s. He's linked with my club Arsenal. Do you think he's the sort of person that could play for a top 4 Premier League club, or do you think with the tier below is probably where he's at?
I think the tier below is where he's at. The problem is there isn't too much in the tier above. So by default, I think he could play for a top 4 team. But I'm not. I think I see a lot of Arsenal fans like pinning a lot of hopes at, like, if we get Toney, we'll win the league. And I just don't think it'll work out like that. First thing, I don't think he's that good, but he could make that difference. So that's one. But second thing is, I think people like the type of player that I could thought about, like, who I'd compare Toney to. I think there's maybe a little bit of Giroud to him, like late bloomer, maybe someone who can hold the ball up well. You wouldn't say, I'm going to sign a Giroud and I'm going to win the league, right? Even if he was good at finishing. So I don't know. I think if I was Arsenal manager, I would more focus on being better at what we do, or finding players in the mold that we have now that are improvements on the ones that we have, rather than looking at an Ivan Toney. Because I've seen it myself. Like, we all thought Lukaku was going to be the missing piece for Chelsea, and actually he just kind of came in and messed up the way that we played. So I'm not totally sold on the Ivan Toney, and that, like, 100 million, like, I'd leave it. So nah, not for me. I'm not. I think you know what? I'll probably bashed him a little bit. I think he's decent, but I just don't think. I think seems to have got better in his absence. I don't think he's as good as people think are saying at the moment.
Okay, let's talk darts now, guys. I've never seen a darts match in my life before the last couple of weeks. We saw my man LL get to the final, 16 years old, young man from Warrington. Unfortunately lose to another Luke in the final. First of all, who followed it? How much did you care? And will you watch another darts match ever again? G.
Why'd you go with me first? Because you know I don't care. I'm going to end up being the Victor Meldrew of this pod. But I don't care.
You'll never be old for the Victor Meldrew of this pod. I'll tell you that.
I don't care about guys throwing pins into the wall. And yes, I could do that. But 180, bang! I could definitely do that. And if you want me to, I'll record it. But just the same as when I catch up with LeBron's records. I'm just
Let me tell you, right? The basketball thing would have been a hard thing to achieve because no one's got the time for it. But I think this is well worth going down to a pub and watching G struggle to even hit the board, let alone a 180. Like,
how hard can it be? How hard can it be?
G, let me tell you, you got to stop disrespect. And I know we'll get into it. But either you have grand delusions of grandeur in your ability, just generally, or you're not respecting people's thing, right? Like, it's not easy, G. And to be honest with you, G, I've known you since school. Your maths ain't that good. So even if you were
I got my C,
half
man. I got my C.
even if you weren't good at dance, I don't think you could do the maths to check out 99% of the time. So at the very least, if you don't respect pins in the wall, respect that these men can actually do some flipping maths, G. You know what I mean? Something that you can't
quick
do.
Maths.
They're not doing it, to be fair. The guy's calling it out in the background. give me that guy and I'll be fine.
Anyway, Jordan, are you finished?
Ollie, sorry. Ollie, is it a sport?
Is it a sport?
What? It's a game.
It's a pastime. It's not a sport, is it?
Wow.
It's not a sport. It's no way as a sport. It's enjoyable, but I have to say I checked out on darts a long time ago. But yeah, it's not a sport for me. But it's a pastime. Snooker's a pastime. You know what I mean? It's not. They're not sports.
Hang on, when were you in? When did you check in?
I think I preferred it back in the days before there was the split and the PDC got involved and all the rest of it. You know,
Okay.
when darts players were seriously fat, and you know, they used to have a a pint in one hand, the dart in the other hand. That was when it was enjoyable. You know, Eric Bristow,
Good old days.
Eric Bristow, Jockey Wilson, all that sort of business. You know, I used to like all that. But yeah,
Are they in shape now?
Huh?
Are they in shape now, the darts players?
Oh, jeez.
Well, I mean, they're not as bad. They're not as bad. They're not as bad as they once were.
George, I don't need to go back. I don't need to go back on the agenda, right? But one thing that I find hilarious, going back to like the AFCON, you know, there's always those memes and vids about that person's not really 18, that person's at least 35. It's always an African player that's lying about their age. We need to have a look at Luke, right? Because he was practicing. By my calculations, he was practicing at the age of 12 down the pub, and I'm just not sure that is legal, right? Like that guy's at least 35.
Well, he held his first dart at 18 months. I met him. It's what he says. That's what he says. I interviewed him, and he was a really nice young man, really, really mature. I hope he does well. But I bottled the question, basically, are you really 16 years old? Because I just thought it was a little bit rude. But the BBC guy after me just asked it straight off the bat. Was like, mate, are you? People would say you're not 16 years old. Are you really? It was like, yeah, I get it all the time. I was like, wow.
I'll also say, good on him. 21-year-old girlfriend, role gender reversal, not good on him. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of things that we're letting slide here, but listen,
yeah. So anyway, Ollie, you put in the group. There's a docu series that's been underway for a few months now for this World Championships. They kind of lucked out a little bit massively with the fact that they've got a real narrative with Luke going through it. But I don't want to focus on the documentary per se, but I want to focus on, we're seeing a template, right? So we first saw it with Drive to Survive, or maybe even go before that to the NFL ones, where we see like a 12-part series where they follow a particular team in NFL, or maybe even across the whole league. I've seen that kind of template replicated across F1, across tennis, golf. Now it appears darts. Are you a fan of this template, and would you watch a series around darts?
I think it holds true for any sport, really. That if you're going to do these kind of fly on the wall type sports documentary series, then you need to have proper access, and you need to feel that you're really getting to see the sport and the people involved in it, warts and all. I mean, if we're including things like all or nothing in this sort of thing, the problem for me with that was that too many times I felt like it was all being stage managed and a bit too kind of, you were only seeing what the clubs wanted you to see. I don't know what the NFL ones are like, and maybe yourself and Marv can tell me a bit more about those ones. But certainly with the All or Nothing, I kind of felt as though I wanted to see more, and I was only getting what the clubs wanted me to see. And yeah, as Drive to Survive has been great because you are seeing kind of these drivers kind of putting themselves out there, and you see them saying things, that you wouldn't get an inkling of just watching the sport. And the fact that so many people have been, turned on to Formula One through that documentary series gives you a sense of how popular or how kind of successful it's been. I'm not so sure if that's the case with the tennis and the golf versions, but with the darts one, it'd be interesting to see how they've kind of how they followed this PDC World Championship that's just gone, and how they've kind of, because I think they were actually following Luke Humphreys, actually, who went on to win it, but whether they kind of went on to the
he's getting slashed
Yeah.
big time.
Yeah, exactly.
Me, he's getting
whether
cut down.
they've kind of just followed Luke Littler instead. But I mean, given how much kind of it was amazing the amount of interest there was in him and making the news and all the rest of it. I'm actually quite pleased for him that he didn't win in the end, because I think at 16 years old, if he is 16, would have been that would have been a lot to take on board, winning the World Championships and then all the hype around him. And I was starting to get quite worried for him, actually. That could you imagine if he'd have won it? The press wouldn't have left him alone. I think he can actually go back after not winning, and get back to his life, and things get back to a certain level of normality. Whereas if he'd have won it, I think the next year of his life would have been insane. And for a 16-year-old boy, I think he needs to live a bit and lose as well, and maybe come back a bit stronger after that. But yeah, to your question, Jordan, I think that when it's Drive to Survive, yes, it's great, but I don't see that a lot of these other documentary series are giving you the level of access you need, or they just don't have the personalities and the characters. And that's what it's about, really. You need the personalities as well to drive these things, to make it interesting. And if you haven't got if you haven't got those people, then you're going to struggle, really. And I'm not sure that, I don't know, I'm not really sure there are that level of, I mean, if they followed Nick Kyrgios around, they might get something interested in tennis. But if you haven't got someone like that level, then it's going to be difficult,
I watched the tennis one on Netflix, and the first one was Nick Kyrgios. It was really good because he's a personality. After that, let me tell you, the remaining 8 episodes, off a cliff. Yeah. Off a cliff.
Complete and utter
so
garbage.
Bad.
The thing is,
so bad.
The funny thing is, right, can I say, so Jordan, I watched his quarters, his semis, and the final. I was really interested in what's happened. I think the two things for me is, I gotta be honest, until I started speaking to you guys, I didn't know they were filming anything. And the conspiracy theorist in me is starting to think, is this all legit? Do you know what I mean? Like, that's how deep it is, because to O's point, they lucked out, and I'm thinking that level of luck is seriously suspect in my mind, to the point where I'd go out on a limb and say, if they didn't have Luke, would anyone have watched it? Like, how many, if you I think even the men down Ali Pali in banana suits wouldn't have watched it. Do you know what I mean? And I when the minute you guys said there was a show, I was like, oh, this stinks. Or it might never have aired. But you're right, it's going to be an interesting thing. But whether I honestly think O's right.
Marv, are you saying the
fix?
Are you saying the fix is in?
Yeah, I'm saying if Luke Little betted himself, he's probably too young to bet. But should he get a ban? I don't know. But I think some of you guys were like educating me on the sheer numbers, and you can't take that for granted. Like the numbers that final and I think the semis put up were exceptional. and people were just interested in it. And I think let's see what happens to darts moving forward, because darts is a bit like snooker. You can have one really good tournament and like never qualify for like another 2-3 years. So I wish him the best, and I do see it as a sport. I've made the stupid distinction that anything on Sky Sports is considered a sport, even fishing, which I've watched on a couple of occasions. And I think, you know, I like to see a bit of diversity in what we watch, because other than football, there's just so much out there that G thinks he can do and be exceptional at.
Guys, forgive me. We're going to be talking a lot about documentaries and docuseries across sports on so many pods coming up. So I'll leave that there for now. We'll just move on, unless anybody's got anything else significant they want to say on this. To Saudi Arabia. Excuse me. So now we've seen for the last few years the influence of Saudi Arabia and how much they have literally got sport in a chokehold. We've seen its influence in football, we've seen it in golf, we've seen it in boxing, we've seen it in F1 and MMA events as well. So my question is a very broad question. I'll start with you, G. What will international and global sport look like in 2034?
Oh, that's a really good question. Yeah, I don't have any facts behind this, but I just have a feeling that, like, eventually, in the same way, like how China backed off and, you know, America threw a lot of money at football and they kind of eased off a little bit to a certain extent. I just don't think, I'm not convinced that the Saudis will follow through. I think it will be 5 or 10 years of a lot of big money. They're realizing that they're paying all this money for effectively has-beens or people on the way down. And I think they'll just get smart and the league will go back to relative mediocrity. So
I mean sport.
Just more
I'm talking about sport.
Yeah. And I think that will happen. That will happen generally as well, because they're getting ripped off. You look at what they pay to have boxing over there, and I don't know that it's having the impact that the desired impact that they want. Like, is it really? Some people call it sports washing. Is it really changing the image of the region? No, I don't think so. Is it really bringing the masses to the region? Is it really developing or building it up? I guess only time will tell. But I don't see a stage by 2034 where all the elite sportsmen are in Saudi Arabia. I don't think it will happen that way.
See, Ollie, I actually disagree with G, because I think they're playing the long game. And G makes the point there about they're throwing a lot of money at this, and they are. Somebody put it to me about 6 months ago to try and encapsulate how much money they have. And the person who was a financial advisor to me, he said, they've got too much money. He said, they've actually got too much money. They can't spend all the money that they have. And when you really think of it like that, you realize that there's no budget here. There's no like pot of money. And once that pot of money is spent, we're out. They can do this like for as long as they want. And G makes the point there also about, are they having an impact? And I think they are, because I think we're normalizing talking about these parts of the world in a way that I think previously was only spoken about negatively. I think they're using sport as a really good vehicle to make their countries. And I personally think they should have a right to have leagues and have sports. I'm not one of these people that believes the World Cup shouldn't be there. But equally, there's definitely a level of sports washing that I think is happening, because it's sport in that region is normalized. Do you think G's right, and they will in 5 years' time just move on to something else? Or do you think they're having an impact? And
they're not going anywhere, Joe. They're in for the long haul. But the thing is, it's a game for them. I mean, as long as the Crown Prince is involved, then yeah, I think that they'll be involved, and I think they'll be interested, because they can see that, you know, it's a big geopolitical game for him. The fact that he can do his bullshit all around the world, and then still manage to carry favour with fans across the world, by, you know, like Newcastle fans, for instance, by buying up sports clubs, and, you know, creating interest in the country in a different way, you know, that turns everything else on its head. I think he likes to. I think this guy actually likes the, you know, the sort of dichotomy between a country that is constantly being kind of harangued by the Western world for, you know, what goes on, and then you know, and the culture of the country, and what we see with, you know, the way that they treat women or whatever it might be. I think he likes that, the difference between that and then suddenly being lauded for what they're doing within sport. I think that's part of the game, and you know, in much the same way as someone like Abramovich kind of got into football and, you know, divested his money into a football club. I think it's all the same game, isn't it? It's all the same game of you know, going from being people that are kind of, you know, are being seen for whatever reason as, or might be getting seen as pariahs, to being seen as somehow cuddly and making people think, well, actually, you know, they're pumping this amount of money into this sport or whatever. I mean, to me, I just see it as there being a serious issue here, that we are allowing all of these sports to be kind of, you know, to be kind of, you know, affected by the fact that money is all that matters really in the end. And that's the only reason why Newcastle can't spend is actually because of, you know, the FFP rules and what have you. But actually, if they were allowed to do what Man City had done, they'd already have gone clear of most of the other clubs in the league already. So yeah, I don't really think that they are going to disappear anytime soon, because, you know, we're talking about them having the World Cup in 2036. So, you know, that tells you what G's saying can't be right, because they are looking at it in the long haul. I mean, that's not tomorrow, is it? You know, they're kind of looking to have the World Cup in 2036. So I see that as being, you know, that tells you that they're looking at this in the long haul.
Marv, 10 years from now, are we looking at the best players from England, Italy, Spain, Germany in the Saudi League? In golf, I watched Stick to Football, Gary Neville's show. They had Rory McIlroy on, and he spoke about the PGA and now talking with Liv about coming to some kind of like resolution where they can link up. I think in 10 years' time, that potentially PGA could be gone. What do you think the landscape of global sport will look like in even 5 years' time?
So, I agree with everything being said, to be honest. Like, Saudi money's long. I actually think they've probably got some really smart, expensive consultants in to give them a plan on how to attack sports, right? So I think what you'll see is the league will dissipate and it will become a China Mark II once they've won the World Cup or whatever tournament they want to win. But I think like things like boxing, I think are easy money for Saudi. It's not like a long sustainable, we need 500 players. You just pay the best fighters with the biggest personalities the money. And I don't know if anyone's seen the pay-per-view fights that they've done, but they've built like 2 stadiums, like one for the main event and one for like the undercard. Like, I think what you'll see, it wouldn't surprise me if you see a Saudi team that's more competitive. By more competitive, I don't mean World Cup winners, but I think competitive as in getting to the World Cup and maybe getting out of the group stage. I'm totally here for it. I think it's interesting that people like Gary Neville are up in arms, but the football bubble will burst quite quickly, I think. And you can already see it with some of the players, notably scummy Liverpool ones, trying to skulk back to the Prem. But yeah, I think it's just funny to look at, really.
You know what? Let's wrap it there. Let's wrap it there for real. Gabriel, Ollie, Marvin, love for that. Listen, this has been Not For Clicks. Check us out on the Instagram, Not For Clicks, YouTube, Not For Clicks, or don't. You don't really care. Peace. We're out.